There you go.
All right. Okay. So I did it from, sorry if you can't see, England and France. Because basically with England and France, like seeing the whole situation with um, Meghan and how it, like how they've reacted. And interestingly enough, even though you don't really hear about France really reacting the way, but France is reacting, but theirs is more subdued. And that goes back to a history with both countries,
Right.
and how they deal with stuff. So when one country does something, the other one always reacts. They might not do it immediately in your face. France tends to sometimes go a little bit behind the scenes, but that's quote unquote the French way they've always handled it historically. Whereas England, ironically, is always one who's like very proud. This is how we do stuff. We're very England. That is very historical. And it's
Okay.
not surprising that their reaction is such. So with England, England actually does have really a long history with people of African descent. They actually have found it goes as far back as antiquity, which is like 43 AD, and that's like super long. That's thousands of years. They found evidence of people with African descent in England, actually thanks to Rome, because Rome came up there, and with Rome, they brought a lot of Africans with them. So that was really what started seeing the presence of them. But you don't, so the what really we think of as the attacks like you're seeing Megan, the kind of cheeky, oh, we're not racist, blah, 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 what we would recognize as racism or prejudice, if that was not present in antiquity as much. It was there. Like it's been there in England, but how we know it and see it, it actually came around thanks to Elizabeth I in the 16th century and the 700s, which I think is very interesting. She helped to popularize it with her privy. They call her council of people the Privy Council, and really, it's thanks to her as well as her Privy Council. What they would do is that once more people of certain descents and groups, it started coming into England and Elizabeth especially, because knowing English history, they're very proud of their roots. Elizabeth I was always proud of her religious roots. So she always held that as a grudge against people. If you weren't part of what she felt was acceptable English Protestant behavior, doesn't matter the religion, you were already on her crap list. And she made sure everybody in England got on the same page. So her Privy Council, thanks to the printing press as well, playwrights like Shakespeare and all them, basically helped to spread that message. She and her council basically spread to the other major cities in England. There's a problem. There's a problem here, and we need to make sure that it stays how we see England, not how England is becoming. And that's a historical sense. So what you're seeing now is what, like 500, 600 years of the same thing essentially going down the line. What the media reacting to Meghan Markle, the royal family reacting to her. What? No, that response is a historical response. Thanks to Elizabeth, it became popularized. And what I actually read about it too was interesting because in their way, a lot of times they associated black skin with witchcraft. So already you have Elizabeth I, who was heavily Protestant, heavily, Christian. If you're not a Christian, if you're not her kind of Christian, thanks to her dad switching over from Catholic to Protestant, there's a problem. So you have a group of people here coming in, different groups of people, but particularly Black people in England, who a majority of them were not practicing Christians, but they were coming in under Elizabeth I's reign because of the Elizabethan age, which was doing well in England. And she sees it as a problem because many of them were not really converting to Christianity. So for her, that's already a strike. You're not converted to Christianity. They already think you're a witch. They don't know really what to do with you because in English society, they weren't going to have somebody of that status reach the same level anyway. So it was a big problem. And the effect of what she started passing down basically became de facto thought, unfortunately, for a lot of well-to-do English people because they saw it as the standard. It became the standard, sadly. Right. So I'm going to show some actually English people that sadly it's very sad because once again,
I'm so
this
angry.
started in the 16th century. Right. It does make you angry. It makes you frustrated, but the thing to understand is like it's ingrained in a lot of the English elite. Even the ones who claim that, hey, we're not like that. It's like, sadly, historically, it's been that way. And many of them don't see necessarily a thing to change the reason. Okay, so I found some notable Black Brits that kind of I thought was interesting. The first one was actually a person from antiquity. Back with the time of the British. This was one of the oldest, I think, examples I could find. She was called the Ivory Bangle Lady. She was found, they dated her to the 4th century. She was a mixed African woman. Most Africans that came to England at that time, back in antiquity, were mostly mixed. It wasn't until around Elizabeth's age you start getting more from the African continent and the Caribbean and such coming in and America. But this lady is an example of a mixed race one, but she's interesting because she was considered a high status lady, and they found out that she was high status because of what she had buried with her. She had this beautiful blue jug, ivory bangles, things that were considered at that time very high class. As well as a bone engraving. They think it came from her casket if she was buried in a wooden casket, but the casket engraving says, "Hail, sister, may you live in God," in Latin, which gives the presumption that she was a Christian, which, knowing Roman history, Christians were very much heavily persecuted at that time. So the fact you have a Christian woman brought over from by the Romans, who already persecuted against Christians. She's in a country where England, especially at that time, there were hardly any Christians. You had Celts, you had, Scots, Irish, all, at that time, a lot of no Christians. So the fact that this woman was buried here and said with that is very interesting. I thought was noted. But yeah, they found her. She, I believe, is in a museum in York now. Like they have information about her. But I thought that was interesting. Right, like you find something interesting. This is a perfect example, which I'm intrigued about, but it's crazy, is Mary Seacole. I don't know if anyone's heard of her. She was actually a British Jamaican nurse. She became famous during the Crimean War. So this is about 200 or so years after Elizabeth's propaganda started permeating in English society and became ingrained in a lot of people's heads. She actually came from Jamaica. She was a trained businesswoman, a healer, and a nurse. She learned all of her trade in Jamaica. Came to England because she's half English. I think her dad was British. I think her dad was British, her mom was Jamaican. She made a lot of money in Jamaica. She came to Britain because they were going through a war. She saw herself as British because of her father. So she was like,
Okay.
let me go help my country. You know, people are dying, soldiers are dying. Let me use my healing hands to help. So she basically applied to become a nurse because she trained in Jamaica, but she didn't get a formal nursing education in England. She applied for a nursing position with the Secretary of War, and Florence Nightingale is huge in England. If people ask who's the most famous nurse in England, they say Florence Nightingale. They were both around at this time.
Mm.
She applied. Florence Nightingale immediately turned her down, and the
Mm.
Secretary of War turned her down. And Florence Nightingale said she turned her down. I believe there are historical records saying that she didn't believe that you could run a business, you could be a successful business person and a nurse. She didn't believe in a healer. She thought she was a charlatan, and she made sure that she told all of her friends, including her friend who was the Secretary of War, that. So she was turned down. So
Mm.
what Mary Seacole then did was like, oh, okay, you're not going to give me a position. I'm going to go make it myself. She went over to the Crimean War herself behind enemy lines and opened up her own business. She opened up her own hotel for wounded soldiers. And those soldiers came to her, and she basically healed a bunch of them with her traditional herbs. Any
Mm-hmm.
recipes she made, she healed a lot of soldiers. She got so much respect from soldiers, it was amazing. They couldn't believe that a woman was doing all this by herself. Meanwhile, Florence Nightingale was there too. And she was hearing about, once again,
Mm-hmm.
this woman who came there. She got pissed because she found out how well Mary Seacole was doing on her own with barely any help. Her own money that she took from her making
Mm-hmm.
lots of money back in Jamaica, she brought to take care of these English soldiers. She
Mm.
basically went into debt. She became bankrupt doing this, but she saved so many lives. After the Crimean War ended, she came back to England in poor health and broke. She basically received a hero's welcome by
Mm.
soldiers, by the English royalty,
Mm.
but they never gave her money for it. They gave her a
Mm.
huge parade. They thanked her for everything. Thank you for your service. We admire your hard work and everything. And basically, she basically spent the rest of her life after that war having to basically scramble to make money, even though she was still getting invited to the royal palaces. They were saying in records she was still being personal masseuse to some of the royals
Mm.
and treating them, but they still would not pay her. In the end, she basically sadly passed away in poverty, while Florence Nightingale got
Mm-hmm.
elevated to top honors. So for her, sadly, she kind of fell by the wayside. She did start getting, I think now they found that she is starting to get some recognition now, thankfully. They made a statue
Mm-hmm.
for her, I think in
Mm.
2016. And she
Mm.
actually is now getting more awareness. Like people are telling her story in England. And I think
Right.
they did say that she was voted recently, a few years ago, as like the number one Black Brit, especially for this. She actually is getting public recognition.
The number
But
one black what?
Black Brit, like the top
Mm.
Black Brit
Mm-hmm.
who went above and beyond for the call of duty,
Mm.
which is still an
Mm.
amazing honor.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
as always, still to this day, Florence Nightingale supporters, which they're huge because she's a hero in England, like what's
Mm-hmm.
happening with Meghan, these historians still trash Mary Seacole. Good example. One historian was noted talking about her time in the Crimea War. Basically, this historian said, "Oh, well, all she did was just serve lemonade to soldiers. She just served them lemonade and gave them snacks. That's
Mm-hmm.
not healing someone. That's not
Mm.
making someone better." Compared to, of course, Florence Nightingale, who went above and beyond and used all this medicine. It's that kind of stuff that's still to this day, sadly for her, But she is getting recognition. And actually now I know that they are starting to teach her in British schools, which is good. But right, it's still showing like that transition from that British thing, which once again, she was taken in by the royals. She was like said, "Hey, you're amazing. We respect you. We honor you. Like you're great, but we're not going to pay you. You know, you're not going to be you're not really going to be part of our society."
She was probably, you know, like Reiki healing them before they knew what was happening. She was
exactly. No, that's right.
What I'm thinking of. If she,
the natural herbs,
if she's being the personal masseuse to the royals, you can best believe she was doing some hands-on healing.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely.
she learned. They from what I read, she learned a lot of tricks of the trade from her mother. Bingo. Her mother and other healers in Jamaica. So she knew true healing herbs and remedies and stuff to treat these soldiers. And even the soldiers' accounts who actually did speak up on her behalf talked about her healing hands and how she was such an amazing person.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So actually, speaking of royals, I laugh about this. So they have at least two royals. One that they talk about but don't talk about, which that's the thing with British royalty, is that there's a lot of drama because it's constant fighting. Like that's the thing. If you actually learn British history, it's not like how they portray it. They try to portray it as like, oh, we come from this descended long line. Yes, there is a descended long line, but it's a descended long line of drama. It's not a full direct line. It really is drama. Like, oh my God. But basically, right, they have their own problems essentially, but there actually were Black Brits in the royal family through blood, but they just don't. That's not something they talk about.
Right.
The first one they said was Philippa of Hainault, I believe her name is. She was a wife and political advisor to King Edward III back in the day. So the rumor is they always paint her as white. They always portray her as this as you can see, very fair skin, you know, all this. But she was rumored to have black blood due to from where she grew up. At the time, they called it the Low Countries, which was modern-day Belgium. And at that time, Belgium was still being in control by Moorish tribes. So, right, and that there is allusion to that in some text with her. But in modern texts, they never bring it up. Like British classrooms and stuff, they never speak on it. Because they don't teach the kids that. They just teach her, oh, she was this very, you know, she's this very helpful lady. You know, she helped the police in England, but they never talk about her background. She actually was known as one of the most royal queens of England because in her family line, she had 4 great-grandfathers that were all kings. One from France, one from Spain, Aragon, one from Italy, Naples, and the King of Hungary. So she had 4 lineages in her. So she was really considered the most royal of the royals. But yeah, they knew her as a competent leader. She was very compassionate. She helped maintain the peace in England. But once again, all known images of her, you cannot find a true picture of her because it's been either altered or they just been destroyed.
It feels like Jesus. It feels like the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. That's Philippa. Actually, ironically, she had a son, and her son was called Edward the Black Prince.
Shit.
So the next one, as you can obviously see, this is Charolette of Mecklenburg. She was the wife
client that looks like that right now. Light skin, same face.
Hey, I was gonna say, hey Tracy, she 2 p.m.
She's 2 p.m.
Yeah. Well, it's Hi Tiffany. Sorry, Tiff.
That is hilarious.
But here's the ironic thing. If you actually do a Google image search, image search of Charlotte of Mecklenburg, almost a bunch of her photos you can definitely see an obvious presence. There is.
Oh, I see it in this picture.
Right, but
Definitely.
there's also photos of where because this was the thing back in the day with royals. It didn't matter if you were white or black or whatever. Royals want to be, like
they altered their pictures. Yeah,
exactly. They think of it's like an Instagram. They're like, I don't like how I look, change it.
Right.
And if you had any features you did not like, either that was a big jaw, receding hairline, you're too big, order degree,
that's right.
They would change it. So with
they
her,
did it freely.
They always edited out. Yep, they tried to edit out her African features as much as they could. And in her case, I think they actually did on PBS a thing of her. She actually was descended from a Portuguese line, the black side of a Portuguese royal line, and the mistress, and she was descended from the mistress of the mistress was an African of Moorish descent. As you can see, genetics very, very heavy. So she actually is Charlotte of Mecklenburg, which King George III, they are the direct line to current modern day royals. Queen Victoria was her granddaughter. Queen Elizabeth, the current queen, is her four times great granddaughter, which means
Queen Elizabeth is
any
black.
of these kids, any of them have recessive genes that can show up.
Which, hold on, Mr. Takira, which means any of their children can come out dark.
Yep.
Well,
exactly.
Wait a second.
And then, the
phenotype features.
However,
maybe
not Harry.
No, because Harry doesn't come through his father, but Harry is royal through Diana. So and Diana is like a first or second cousin to Charles, so she might be of that same line. She was never a commoner.
Good point.
Yeah,
good
so
point.
he is royal. But then this begs the question. Something you were talking about the other day. And I'll try to say it quick.
No, you're fine.
Remember the question. Are they concerned about how dark the baby will be? They know about Queen Charlotte. That wasn't that long ago. This particular king was the king who we fought against to get away from in the Revolutionary War. She was the queen at the time that we signed the Declaration of Independence.
Are you serious?
Yep. No,
I'm serious.
Charlotte, North Carolina is named after her. Georgia is named after King George III.
What?
Bingo.
Almost all the countries, or not country, most of the colonies in the South are English colonies. They're all named after royals or people who are influential to the crown.
Exactly. So once again, the question,
Queen Elizabeth.
The question of how dark will Archie be? They know this gene is there. Remember, you were saying now if she is. We know that Meghan is light skinned, and we were saying, well, why would they be so uptight about how dark the baby's? Because the baby can't be dark. This woman is definitely darker than this painting.
Oh, got it.
And the thing too is Will's line. That's the one that'll be the most interesting because also I thought it was funny. Will's daughter is named Charlotte. Bingo. And they called her, was it Charlotte Diana Elizabeth?
Okay, and they named check this out.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Gio.
The day that Meghan and Harry got married, or the day they think Meghan and Harry got married, she admitted they got married 3 days before. But the day we saw the wedding, the day that they got married to the world, was on Queen Charlotte's birthday, May 19th.
Oh, shit.
Everybody was all up in arms about somebody who had one of the queens who got her head chopped off. So they're like, it's a curse. They want them to get married on the day. So forget that. They got married on Queen Charlotte's birthday, May 19th.
That's crazy. And you know, she's very calculating. There's no accidents.
Oh no, not at all.
Go ahead,
There's
Takira.
never any accident. No, you're right. There's never any accidents in the royal family. Like they all take names and things from previous family members, previous royal family members. It's not, they don't just pick random names. It's always tied into some other former family member. But yeah, that's the thing is, even if you put whatever, the thing is like, it doesn't matter. This woman is a direct line to modern day royals. So even if they wanted to deny it, there are still recessive genes in there that one of them can inherit and show features down the line.
That's right.
So even if, say, they want to argue it away and just be like, oh, it was, you know, she's French, or oh, she's German. That's their go-to line when they want to explain something off that it's not what it is. Oh, that's their Italian heritage.
But they are all related.
Yep.
I wanted to just also show you something. It just got to me about like publicity of what they would do. Both Charles and William, one of their names is Arthur. They all have like 5 or 6 names. So Arthur, when Charles becomes king and when William becomes king, they have the choice of changing their name. They don't have to be Queen Elizabeth. She could have changed her name. I don't know if you remember in the show where they said, what name are you going to call yourself? And she was just like, I'm just going to call myself Elizabeth, you know, F all that stuff. I'm wondering, or I've been thinking about this since all this BS popped up, how crazy it would be if one of them changed their name to King Arthur, and the imagery that comes up with that and what they think, you know, how that would play to the public. Instead of calling himself King Charles, instead of William calling himself King William, call himself King Arthur, which brings up the whole Camelot fantasy. Anyway, I was going to connect it and I didn't connect it well, but I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, you're fine, because my brain was going. I was like, oh. But yeah, so that plays in them. And also when they talk of Charlotte of Mecklenburg and King, well, when you talk of this couple in particular, it's always King George III, but it's never in a positive light with him because of his mental condition. Like if you study British history, King George III is essentially the one who, they always call him Crazy George. Any movie he plays in, it's always negative. It's always a negative light about him. But her, you don't really hear as much. She's always like in the background. You don't like, oh, she just does her, you know. I still think it's funny with this. But yeah, it still continues on still, because even George and Charlotte, same thing. They always, like most royals back in the day, they always believed it was their God-given right to rule people. So that's where you get that as like, well, we were ordained by God. Most royals believe in that. We were ordained by God to rule people. Not that we were ever given this privilege. It was by God. It comes from us to rule over people. So to think that a woman like this would be, you know, to have it, they wouldn't want to admit that, because once again, 200, 600 years ago or whatever, Elizabeth I didn't even believe in that, because she believed all Black people were witches. It's witchcraft. Like, I don't know how you guys get whatever. So
can I just say one thing, one more thing about her? As early, right now, Bridgerton is on television, and even though Bridgerton is fiction, it's based on that particular era when she was the queen. I think that's why Shonda Rhimes cast that particular woman as the queen, that she's supposed to represent Queen Charlotte. And then, there's a scene where she's sitting and having dinner with her husband, and all of a sudden he kind of goes crazy on her is because he was being poisoned. It was something that he was taking, or something like paint or something really weird. He wasn't just mentally ill, he was poisoned. So or slowly poisoned.
Back in that, well, that's the thing. A lot of treatments back in that day, even though they claimed to be good, were actually like poisonous, but they didn't know.
Right.
They thought at
Right.
that time you could give somebody mercury and it'll cure.
Right.
Oh, it's okay if I just cut you open and just let you bleed for days, because that's healing.
Exactly.
You know, they didn't think anything about it, because they by them, you know, being enlightened, they felt that science knew best. So that's what they knew is true.
Yeah, bloodletting.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or ingesting weird chemicals, or even putting chemicals on your skin, like, you know, to
Yep.
make you as white as possible. That's what it was at the
Or that
first.
powder.
Right, that had lead in it. And, you know.
Right. Right.
So this is the third woman. She's actually, I find her very interesting. She's called Emma. I never know how to pronounce her last name. She is actually the Marchioness of Bath. So she is actually, in a lot of British contemporary sources, like newspapers and everything, they actually talk about her and Meghan together. Like when Meghan first came on the scene, they brought this woman up a lot. So she is actually the daughter of a Nigerian oil billionaire. And her mother was English, or is English. She's alive still, an English socialite. So this woman is very high class because her mother, I think, is of royal lineage. So she actually married this man. I can never pronounce his name. They got married in 2013. And his family is they're Marquesses. His family are considered Marquesses. So what that means is, in British royal society, they're number 2 in the royal like social order. So you have the royal family, and then like William and Kate is next, and these guys are right underneath them in terms of importance socially.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And like his family has a ton of money, her family has a ton of money. Like, you want to talk about like excellence, this woman right here, she like does her own business, everything. And what ended up happening is that, first of all, she got railed in the press just like Meghan as well. But they used it as more of, oh, well, her husband wouldn't be a good match, even though they both were of like, I know with her coming from royalty, they didn't really rail her as much, because they're like, oh, your mother, she's an English socialite. She's this, she can trace her lineage back. Da 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 da. You're fine because you're considered British to us. So weirdly, they were like, oh, it's fine. Until his mother, like what is currently happening with Meghan and them, she actually mentioned in a lot of British newspapers and stuff, British publications, that she also, like Meghan, underwent a lot of racial discrimination. But the British are very key in their racial discrimination. They're very discreet. They're very indirect. They're not Americans. They will not flat out tell your face that, just like William's response today about we are not racist.
Right.
How they do it, it's very indirect racism and discrimination. So she actually went through, similar to Meghan, a lot of racial discrimination from his mother, because they actually had kids together, and the mother made comments about the children, like how the children came out. And actually seeing, if you look up pictures of this woman, her kids are not they've inherited fairer skin, but the mother still had a problem with it because of the features some of the children inherited. So what she ended up doing was she actually banned her mother-in-law. She got a protective order against her mother-in-law from ever interacting with any of her kids.
Oh, wow.
Right. And then what ended up happening is that these two are now the second highest, because his father was, I guess, in the social order, the second highest, but he, I guess, gave up his title and the son ended up taking it over. So they're still in British society. They mostly keep a low profile. They're like those British aristocrat people you don't really hear about, but she actually has, like Meghan admitted in publication, she personally also has dealt with a lot of discrimination. Granted, the British way of doing it, especially the royal way, like remember we were talking about Elizabeth the First. She didn't care, but she was making it sure everybody from the top knew if you do not fit these qualifications, you do not get in our circle. That is essentially what his mother started doing to her and their children. Even though this woman in her own right is of British royalty and, you know, high status, both in Nigeria and in England, she still was not good enough in his family's eyes.
So Beyonce won't be considered.
In the British side, Beyonce would just be like, oh, you're Beyonce. It's just the flash of it. It's not so much like if you tried to actually come into our social environment.
It's because she's the 18th cousin of Elizabeth II.
That doesn't matter to them.
Like, wow, that's crazy.
It's like you still don't have the in England, it's all about the connections. It's like, who are you? It's like, who are you related to? Okay, so you're this many distant cousins about. Where did you go to school at? Oh, you didn't go to school with any of us. It's still very much that, like, fake nice. We get a lot up here. Some people will give us. But the British take it to a whole nother level with that subtlety. Well, they'll just be like, oh, I'm sorry, the positions are full. And they mean that. Wow. And even if you get a spot in, they might just be like, they will still ignore you and just be like, I'm sorry, do you? No, don't worry. I didn't hear anything. And they will flat out ignore you for a whole time. That doesn't matter. That don't matter to them.
Even the Bush family, because I heard that the Bush family are related. Because it was an episode I was watching, and they were saying celebrities, something of royalty. And they had a whole listing of celebrities that are related to either the Queen Elizabeth I, II, or I don't know who rules France. I don't know, but
France doesn't have a royalty anymore.
Right. But they were saying it was one of the kings. It was, of course, hundreds of years ago, but they were saying that the lineage connects them to that king. But they were saying that Beyonce is the 18th cousin. And they also did say that George Bush family, they're related, like distant cousins.
Do you know that every president is connected to the royal family, including Barack Obama?
Well, then I would say in the British way of it, if they had, well, it's not even if they had to choose, but if there were a way to get in, they would definitely take the Bushes over, say, Beyonce. And that's not to be like, oh, we just take them because once again, remember, it's that inner thinking in them, which is like, okay, you're Beyonce, that's cool, but it's not in their, it's like in their head, it's not imaginable that you could still be in
They can't help it.
Right, they can't help it. It's ingrained. This is like centuries of them.
It is very systemic,
Exactly. So the fact that you have somebody coming in like Meghan did, even though she was trying to fit in, like you saw her, and you could even see their body languages towards the end before they left. It was just like everybody turned it off. Right. They couldn't take it anymore. They were just like, we do not care anymore. You have basically, you've crossed the line that we're willing to tolerate you being here. And from that, we do not care. You cease to exist in us. We will just act like you don't even exist. And like I said, you can see it in their body languages when they take photos. Look at the positioning. All of them would distance themselves if they had to.
As if she's the plague. And that's crazy.
Well, you know what?
In their mind, they think it's witchcraft. They think it's unfathomable. You can even get to that kind of level. It's like, okay, celebrities But
not only that, she outshined them. She outshined them, and she had the American freedom principle in her head. They don't have that, which is why.
No, the British are taught
right.
to be very like
just
conservative.
Be subdued. Exactly.
Right. The royalty does not do that. And the fact that Meghan was coming in there and kind of being like, "This is just who I am," they're like, "No, you're supposed to adhere to what we do."
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a problem, and that became more and more of a problem.
Yeah.
Sick.
So that's England's way of dealing with it.
Understand why all this time I just didn't understand why there were it's like a lot of Caribbean people look up to the royalty. Like even when Diana got married, and I remember it to this day, like people were like, "Oh my God, Diana's getting married." It was like this big festival going on. And I just like, okay, and like who are these people? You know? It just
because I mean, England has always been for especially one, because of colonization of England. It was still that place. A lot of them felt like they could still like it was very they could still come and make a home there. But then to get there a lot of times was like and that's the thing they always talk about in British society is how rigid it is. Even though they try to say like, "Oh, we're changing with the times," they really don't. No. They really don't. Like even American stuff that comes over there, Brits are very much kind of like, it's not for us. Like this is a little bit too much. Like, oh, it's cool, it's flashy, but it's a little bit too much. Like that for Brits, it's like
actually, it kind of makes sense because Africans do it.
Yeah.
Right? When they come to America, Caribbeans do it. When they come to Caribbeans are very, very sedutty when they come to America.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And and it's I just think it's inbred at some point.
No, it is.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It is. Like from the moment they're born, schooling, like everything there. It's schooling, clubs, education, community. It's just becomes like
second nature.
Exactly. So you can't once again, I still go back to how the royal family's dealing with Meghan. It's like even though they're saying, "Oh, we're not racist, we're not like this, we're not like that," but it's like you can't help but be like that. Nobody's saying, it's fine. We understand that's ingrained in you. But
we understand it. They don't know it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, to me, it even feels like the American flag. Like I've never had a real attachment to the American flag.
Right.
And I'm always shocked when I see people like, oh, America, and the flag. And I just don't relate. And I feel like it's the same way that you might have felt with Diana, Tiffany. It's like you might have already been a part of a new system just from your birth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But France, interestingly enough, is different, but not different to England's reaction to things. So, like I said, England is very conservative, but when you notice France and their reaction with it, if it's either from African cultures, the countries that they've colonized and influenced, even America, their reaction with the people of African descent from those countries is definitely, I would say, I call it a little bit more fluid than England is, because the way England came at it, and it has always been, is very structured. It's like, this is this, and that's where you stay. Whereas France, when France was starting in, and they were like historically, they did have African tribes in France. Back in the day, it was called Gaul, but they never really like kicked them out like the English did. They never really like separated them like the English tried to do. It was more kind of like, well, part of us, so it's a little more fluid. Like, hey, we're all together. Now, did that change? Yes. That actually started changing in the 17th and 18th centuries, which ironically kind of similar to the same time as England with Queen Elizabeth I, witchcraft and all that. Now, France didn't say witchcraft, but they were more like, for France, it was more of the, which made me laugh because I'm thinking of it, the the French Revolution kind of changed their points on it. Because the French Revolution really messed France up. Like, they already were dealing with their issues with everything. And then they came in, the revolution happened, which basically they took down the monarchy. The people were killing people in the streets with the guillotine. And the French royalty was just like running for their life, scared. Mind you, everyone else around the world was watching this go down as well. So the French elite was like, we have to put a stop to this. So once the revolution ended, they call it the Reign of Terror, because what ended up happening was a lot of the elites came back, like Napoleon, and then and basically put the iron hammer down. They started more separations between classes of people, especially with groups of blacks as well. Not as much unity compared to England, which was like always like that. It was very structured. France, not so much until the revolution, which once again, it's ironic. So even like a lot of their historical figures, if you had any African features starting in the 17th and 18th century in France, they started whitewashing it. Napoleon, I think the third, Napoleon already didn't like Africans in the first place. But his descendants started changing it too. Just like they did in Egypt with whitewashing the pharaohs and stuff, that's what they started doing with a lot of their French heroes. Anybody who had African features from back in the day, after the French Revolution and everything, they started changing it to make them more, white French, not African French, not black French, white French. Right. Like, good example, King Louis X of France, he abolished slavery in 1315. That's like 500 years before the French Revolution. Just like what I told you guys in the chat about with France doing with the Algerian War. They passed a law to abolish something, like, hey, we need to fix this. He actually voted to abolish slavery in 1315. France dragged their heels on it, and I think it was until like another 500 years they finally started abolishing slavery. Even though a lot of French people and a lot of people started going to France, even ones of African descent. Yes, you had the ones who were serving there as, slaves and stuff, but a lot of them went there freely to go to France, because France offered a lot of African descent people more opportunities than they could get in other European countries. They were like, hey, you come to France, you can make your way here. We'll give you opportunities. Once again, leading up to the French Revolution. And then after that, they were like, no, we got to put a stop to this because this is ridiculous. So I always think that's interesting how them in England, their responses towards these kinds of things were interesting. But from the moment a lot of Africans have come to France, they have heavily shaped French history. But the French never admit that. You ask them to this day, besides Josephine Baker, or which ironically, I also noticed this, which they said with the French now, when Black Americans started coming to France, they even the Africans of French descent would notice that they got special treatment. The white French would treat them much differently than the Africans did. Even Josephine Baker, she is still considered, like in France, she's considered like a royalty, basically. They honor her. They're like, she's so special, she's so honorable. But there's, James Baldwin, the same thing too. But James Baldwin actually noted, I think when the Algerian War started kicking off, when France was getting involved in that in the 50s, he actually did start getting discriminated against. But he was saying before that, he was getting treated like he was the man around town in France, which
James Baldwin, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
he's one of the astrologers that I was talking. I never knew he was an astrologer.
I didn't.
And Langston Hughes, both of them.
I believe that.
I didn't know either. That's good to know.
I just found this out like 2 months ago. It is kicking my ass. I need to find out more, but go on.
No, you're good. But yeah, so to see, like, even if you go to France these days, you will still see the different reactions French people give to different descent of African people of African descent. Now, if you're American, they treat you a certain way. African,
the jazz musicians,
right? Yeah, jazz music, because for the French, they've said it's like a cultural thing, so they respect the culture, which I still think is very interesting. But that's another topic. Speaking of culture, here are basically 3 men who really did highly influence French culture. Alexander Dumas, who was basically literature. He actually is known in France as the top French writer, like French classical writer. They teach his work in school. It's in hundreds of different languages. But ironically, how France treats him, he actually is mixed race. I think his father was actually a famous French general. His father came to France. His father brought him over from France. He fought in so many wars for France and got honors, medals, and everything. He had his son. His son became a writer, huge French writer. He's still honored this day. Ironically, the French are now trying to change that, white France. So what is happening is they actually are coming out with a movie trying to discredit Alexander Dumas. They actually are making it because apparently the movie is talking about he has a ghostwriter. Because once again, white France after the French Revolution refused to believe that a lot of people of African descent can do stuff like this. Alexander Dumas wrote classical works. So now they're making a movie trying to discredit him. So they're trying to show it that he basically is egomaniacal and he has a ghostwriter. His ghostwriter basically, they're saying that he faked all those books he wrote, that he had a ghostwriter, and that the ghostwriter was good. That's the only reason he became famous, was because of this ghostwriter. Even more insulting, if you look at who they're portraying to play him, is actually a white French man, a famous white French actor. Right. And they make him look what's his name? Gerard Depardieu. Yeah, they're having him play Alexander Dumas with like a curly whip. And I was just like,
how would you discredit this guy? Like, I remember in high school, they had us read that book. Shoot, what's the name of the damn book? It's not the Three Musketeers.
He did the Count of Monte Cristo. He did the Three Musketeers. The Count of Monte Cristo is a famous book. He actually says was based on his father, the Count of Monte Cristo. Ironically, he actually would talk. He would talk positively about him being of Black descent. Like he was, even though he was in French high society, he would talk positively about being from a Black father. Whereas when people would used to talk smack about him in France and other royalties, he would not assault them, but he would basically challenge them to duels for his honor. He's like, you're not going to talk about my race like this.
Check out his hair. Look at the hairstyle. The style he's rocking with the other guy, I'm forgetting the name, but not this one. I know we're talking about France. I just want to say, look at his hair and think of every painting you've ever seen of Beethoven. They used to call Beethoven is German composer. Many people know that he had Black black blood in him. They used to call him. Part of his nickname was the Moor. Something had the name Moor in it. And of course, we don't have photographs of Beethoven like this, but when you if you ever see another photo, or you see there's a famous, you can buy a bust and put on your piano or whatever of Beethoven and the composers. When you look at the bust and you look at Beethoven's hair, Beethoven was the first rock star, first big time music celebrity worldwide. He had, his hair was like this guy's hair. Beethoven was black. That's all I want to say. I'm
you're
done.
But
my 2 cents.
Alexander Dumas, he has a huge influence in France for literature. Like, his stuff is still taught the world over. This man's been gone for hundreds of, I'm pretty sure like hundreds of years, if not hundreds of years, like 200 years.
He's really famous.
Right, he's really famous, and his work will stand the test of time. But the fact that modern France now is trying to discredit that is always funny to me, because it's just like, it's that, once again, like Miss Tracy's talking about, that ingrained mindset. It's like, it's unbelievable that you could be able to compose or write these kinds of things that's not human, as they like to claim.
Yes.
Oh, you can believe it. A lot of them.
No, I'm just getting a little,
this guy is
because it's like, why do you try so hard to discredit a human being because of their skin color? It's still
because the energy we emit, the energy that we have through our melanin.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. Why do you think, was it 10 years after Michael Jackson died, they're still trying to squash his reputation? Because his energy is still here. It is still an influence. We are so powerful. And if people, if they don't continue to squash the fact that this guy is a brilliant, prolific writer. And but wait, let me tell you, just one more little breadcrumb. What was it, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, on Twitter, I saw trending, and this is kind of how it works. This dude is dueling from beyond. Gerard Depardieu has just been accused of sexual molestation by an actress. So they're starting to Me Too him. He was one of the most famous. He is one of the most famous actors in France. One of the most famous actors in the world.
Yep.
And this is the first time anybody's pointing the finger at him saying Me Too. Go ahead, Alexander. You kick his ass from the grave. That's all I got to say.
You discredit somebody, that energy comes back on you.
Yeah, that karma.
I can't believe that somebody can create that kind of work. Like,
right.
Okay, good luck to you.
And Gio, the name that you just mentioned, he's the one that's playing Dumas?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, he's the one that's playing Alexander Dumas, but basically portraying him as like
a white
guy. Like egomaniac, right? Evil? Like egomaniacal, like he cheated, he lied, he took advantage of this poor ghostwriter.
Wow. Well, there goes spirit. And by the way, the melanin skin. I was watching the Black Church. I think I told you guys this already, but I was watching the Black Church, and which is on YouTube right now. My clients told me to, check it out, and I did, and it was just beautiful. Absolute, the historical.
I gotta watch that tonight.
You gotta watch it because the history and how cool. And one of the historians said they tried to kill us, but they couldn't kill us. And the same thing with Meghan. Before she could make a statement in the world and produce something with honor, they tried to squash her.
They really did. Right before our eyes.
But they couldn't squash her. They were always trying to kill us. Always.
Right.
This is not just strange fruit. They've always tried to do this, but it ends today.
Yeah.
It is not allowed anymore. What you say, Takira, get out? Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Go, girl. Get out of my house.
Yeah. Like, just get out.
Get out.
But yeah, no, it's interesting because I also ironically, like, bringing up England and France, these are the two countries that you're starting to see the most responses from people of African descent, blacks, not even just Black Americans, but you're seeing it, the BLM movement in these two countries in particular, causing the most fuss in Europe, which Europe is all about being like, we're better than America. They're going to find out exactly what that means racist. Once this starts kicking off.
I saw a documentary.
I think they had issues with Muslim African Muslims.
Oh yeah,
this happened. They still do, right?
Yeah, no, because in France and England, they were always fighting the Moors.
France was racist.
Right, France is
always.
Because it's like, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I was watching a documentary after George Floyd had died. And it was about, I forgot what Leopold, it was about the British police. And it was on the streets, and this woman saved this kid's life, and they just stopped him for no reason. And he stood her ground, and so many police came to surround him. And the way she said it is that she said they only surrounded him because he was dating at the time, like literally in the moment you could tell this white girl. But they were going after for no reason. And she stood her ground, and she filmed them. And it got to the point where they had to back down. And I mean, stood her ground. And it was like one police, and then it was 4 police. And she argued with them down. I was so proud of her. You know?
As she should.
As she should. Yeah.
Yeah.
If one of us hurts, all of us hurts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my motto from this point on.
You're right.
Thank you, sweetie. Yeah.
Well, it's funny too, the makeup in the two countries are becoming so heavily influenced with minorities in England and France. Exactly. And that's a problem for a lot of white French and white British that they don't want to admit.
Yeah.
That is so, I mean, it's not a surprise for me.
It's so deep.
Not a surprise.
It's tied. It's ingrained. It's just like you were saying, Miss Tracy, a lot of them just they can't fathom it. Like, they don't realize that they're doing it. They just figure, oh, well, this is how it's always been. And it's like, no, it's not. You should just, and now it's coming back to get a lot of them.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And thank God, like, for the death of George Floyd. You know what I mean? Because I was so honored. I thought I was so honored that they were supporting America. But it turns out they have their own hurt. And they were, honoring America for themselves as well. We support America because of what's going on here. Like, we know, like, you're not lying, Black America.
Right.
Exactly.
But a lot of white countries, also stood up for us. It was beautiful.
It was.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Like, my friend, she told me that in the Netherlands, because, her family, they're from Suriname. But most people from Suriname, they have family in the Netherlands, and they're Black. And they told me that, over there they support, America.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, I didn't know that with Netherlands. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Is that everything, Takira?
Oh, just one more. So there actually is, well, a royal influence in France. So this woman, this is the last slide. Her
Yes.
name is named Louise Marie Therese. She's the Black Nun of Moray, they called her. So she's a French nun, and she was claimed to be the illegitimate daughter of Queen Maria Theresa of Spain, who is one of the most famous French kings in history, in France history, Louis XIV, the AKA the Sun King. They always called him.
Yeah.
So she was supposed to be, or they've claimed over years that she's the illegitimate daughter of the Queen, not Louis XIV, but his wife, the Queen. They called her the Mauress of Moray at her abbey, at her church. Actually, interestingly enough, so as where usually when British people have illegitimate children, the royalties, they would usually ignore them, with the exception of a few. In this woman's case, that's not the case. She actually had her portrait, this picture, her portrait was made. Mind you, this is a Black woman. Her portrait was made by the same artist that painted most of the French kings from that time period. From
now.
To Louis XIV. Her mother's husband, a woman, a Black woman, a nun, whatever, got the same portrait made by the same artist that painted French kings. That right there is something.
Yeah.
She even addressed Louis XV, which is Louis XIV's son, the Dauphin, the king, the prince.
The prince.
She addressed him, her half brother, as brother when when she would see him. When her mother died, which to me solidifies it, because why would you do this? 2 years after Queen Teresa died in 1683, 1685, her husband, Louis XIV, the Sun King, gave this woman a lifetime pension of £300 for the rest of her life.
Oh.
Now, why would she get that from a king?
Right.
Why would she get a portrait made by royal portrait and be able to address Louis XV, the next royal in line, as her own brother?
Right.
Not to mention that King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette named their daughter Marie Therese.
Yeah.
Remember, royalty always name it in honor of someone else.
That's right. I never knew this. Wow. When I saw the name, I was like, okay.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
That just gave me goosebumps.
It really does.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh my God.
And actually, it's funny, in most royal families, you can actually find some Black royals. Like in Italy, the Medici family, they actually did have a guy. There's I can find a picture of him, but he actually became a duke, even though he was assassinated by his cousin or brother. He had a child. That child was actually taken in by his own mother, or his grandmother, I think. And there's a painting of that girl. She's pale, and they try to keep saying she's Italian, but you can see, once again, the phenotypes, and her father, right, the features. Also, her father had an official portrait as well in Italy.
My God. Wow.
Hidden in plain sight. They never talk about this woman in France.
Right. I was going to say that in the last panel that you showed with Dumas and the other two guys, the guy in the middle, he was Marie Antoinette's piano teacher or music teacher. I don't know what other instruments.
And he helped to influence Mozart. They called him the Black Mozart. He actually, Mozart's father used to watch this guy play. He was so good. Nobody believed he actually could play. They thought first of all, he learned how to play. He learned how to play the violin. He also learned how to fence. He was a champion fencer, a champion shooter, as well as a excellent violin player. He actually went around Europe and gave concert tours. Nobody believed this man was that good. Mozart's father even saw him play, was so inspired by how he played because it was so different from everybody in that time period. He ingrained that in his son to be better than this man. And he still couldn't be better than him.
Wow.
And Mozart is considered a classic. This man, sadly, when he died, Mozart bought all of them, and very rarely is he played on classical music stations. You can actually find clips of his music on YouTube. This man was that good. He even had concerts, and at his concerts, this was the very ironic thing. At his own concerts, some of his own people, even people that he hired to play in his concerts, would not play with him because they figured it was like working with the devil. They were like, we do not want to play with him because we do not want to be influenced by the devil. They believe that this man was so gifted.
That's because he was above them.
Exactly, he was. He even went back to his home country because he actually was of French not French royalty, but French elite. Because his father was a wealthy planter, his mother was a slave. His father brought him over to France once he knew his son had skill. But he actually went when I don't know if it's Haiti. I think he's from either Haiti. I think it's Haiti. When Haiti was going through their revolution, he actually went back to Haiti to go help out because he felt so drawn to help with the cause. Exactly.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
He was so inspired to go back. He went back to his home country to go help out, give money what he could, fight. He was actually in the French army too, and he actually got promoted to brigadier general. But you never hear about this
picture.
Man.
I love the picture of him with the. Oh yeah, he's hot. He's got the sword in his hand.
Like I'm telling you, find his music on YouTube. It is amazing. Like hearing him, hearing the playing, even the people playing the music. He composed his own music too. A composer and a writer, and like I said, he drew crowds because nobody believed how good he could play. He really went off the script in terms of violin playing. He really did influence modern violin players and some of the tactics he used. It's still used in common thing. Actually, they said classical composers have noted with Mozart's music, watching Mozart play and hearing certain notes are notes that he used in Mozart's work.
Oh.
And Mozart, remember, they say, is a classical musician. He's one of the greats.
Yeah.
And this man influenced Mozart.
He is. That they try to make him a god. They claim that, put on Mozart's music for your children and it'll make their brains better, which is bullshit. But it's like, come on.
For some reason,
this 300, almost 200 years, 250 years ago, then he's there was nothing, and especially actually, if he's copying Bologne's music and his style, well, then maybe it's true that your brain will expand when you listen to the music.
He's one of the few guys who, even in France, they don't talk about him. They don't. He's like he almost does not exist in French society, even though he's helped influence it. Actually, out of all three men, there's a thing in France called the Pantheon, which is where they call them the heroes of France, or whoever makes great contributions to France, they get put in there. These two men, they're not in there. Their bodies are not in there, which I still find funny. They have commemorative plaques. And these are the only two, Dumas and César are the only two Black French people in all the history of France who have any commemorative plaques in that in the Pantheon. Voltaire is buried in there. Other French historical royals and stuff are buried in there. as a testament. But the fact that these two get commemorative plaques, they're not buried there. They get commemorative plaques, but the middle one does not. Always makes me laugh. Yeah, and Cesare, actually, he was influential in literature and politics because he was from Martinique, and he wrote, I think, Negritude or something, but he basically wrote like political discourse about accepting pro-blackness, and it caught on in France. And he really helped to change the tone in French politics in terms of that.
Well, then, that makes me more impressed that Francis Ford Coppola, Sofia Coppola, who made the most recent Marie Antoinette movie in 2006, that she actually took the time to put Joseph Boulogne in the film and show him as a Black man teaching Marie Antoinette how to play the harpsichord. That's a big deal.
Like I said, even in England, England has its own classical genius with Black.
Oh, yeah.
He still does not get any recognition. This man is, I've actually heard his music. He actually wrote it based on, he went to America and wanted to make classical music for Black Americans. He actually did make a series of, what are they called? He basically did make classical music for Black Americans using our own spirituals, which was almost unheard of. He did this. This man was considered a genius musically from the age of like 8 or something. In British society, they never accepted him. Never, ever. This man went to America. He was sitting with presidents and stuff. He wrote with classical people. His music was played all over. The minute he came back to England, he was always reminded he was Black first. This man even penned compositions throughout his life, up until even before he died. He wrote a composition based on something about Japan. I think it was like he was learning about stuff. This man also taught himself composing as well.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. I think he graduated he graduated from London's Royal Music Theatre or something.
Academy.
Academy, right.
Yeah.
And basically, even a year before he died, which he actually died pretty young, he died from tuberculosis. He worked himself to death. They would not allow him to go see his own composition he wrote. They wouldn't even let him get into the theater to play his own music.
What the
heck? He had to pay money to sit and watch someone else do his own composition.
Oh, no.
That's some bullshit, people. That is some bullshit.
I'm telling you, his name is what? And actually, it's funny because he got to know Queen Victoria. Oh, what's her name? Queen Victoria's goddaughter, quote unquote goddaughter, Sarah. Oh God, she was brought over from Africa, and Queen Victoria became so like inundated with her. She took her on as her goddaughter. Sarah Forbes Menendez, that's it. Sarah Forbes Menendez's daughter actually helped this artist make music. She gave him like traditional drums and stuff he actually used in his compositions. Samuel Coleman. Samuel Taylor Coleman is his name. Samuel Coleman. Yeah. If you look him up on YouTube, they did a beautiful documentary about him in DC, I think, one of the DC churches. He actually did perform there. When he performed there, they said that the whole church was filled with people, even waiting outside. He had people outside the door in the cold listening to his music. For out. This man played music, I think, for like 2 or 3 hours, and everyone was standing outside that church listening. Wow! So moved by what he made.
That is amazing. Amy Cesar, yes. This writer. You were trying to think of the book that he wrote. It's called oh gosh, it's all the way down at the bottom. Come on, Wendy. The book is called The Discourse of Colonialism in 1955. So I just wanted to get that that title out. That sounds familiar.
But essentially, to wrap it all up, England and France, they each have their own way they deal with Black history and people who have influenced that. But it is still very structured historically in that rigid, even though you may have lived here and your family may be from here, whatever, you're still never be one of us, because it's ingrained historically in that mindset. But yeah, so that's essentially it.
Do you see it from a tarot's perspective? You don't have to do it right now. Being dismantled. I mean, I feel like it, but like from a psychic perspective, do you see it being dismantled?
I think yes. I think I do see it being dismantled. I think a lot of this is now, I want to say it's like judgment in a sense. Like, I think the judgment card, I want to say the tarot card, but I definitely think the judgment card, because it's more or less like, this is a long time coming. This is you stifling people who have basically helped to build your country to what
Britain,
it is.
France,
Britain,
America,
England, France, these countries. It is judgment, essentially, for you silencing people for doing this. This is now
restructuring history and pictures and
exactly
to erase us.
Right. Essentially trying to erase something that, to me, I think is funny, because if you erase us, you erase yourselves. Because without our influence, you wouldn't have the countries you have.
Who are you?
Wouldn't even have some of the people. Exactly. Like you wouldn't have some of these people who gave you these things. You wouldn't have some of these royals. You wouldn't have some of these institutions. You have profited from us. So this is judgment. You've been trying to do this. And so guess what's starting to happen? Like in France, your churches are burning down. The Notre Dame got burned down. What was it? They said a billionaire just died on some billionaire in France just died on a helicopter ride like 2 days ago.
A helicopter crash. That's right.
Helicopter crash.
And the billionaire had to do with?
He was part of like French politics, like an influential person in French politics, like trying to, they said he was trying to, I guess, like help influence or shake things up politically in France. So it's like seeing these things start happening in England, the thing with Meghan, also, once again, BLM in both countries.
Yes.
Large, heavy presence of people. This is judgment. Like, you can't just expect us to forever hold you as sovereign. You're not sovereign anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
And to add that extra component, which is a strong consideration, the mental health, like what they did to our mental health for hundreds of years, and to have like Meghan represent even that form of mental health against Blacks.
Right.
One drop of Black skin, gives her that mistreatment.
Yeah.
Damn.
Exactly.
I feel that, even though I've been sleeping a little bit. Yeah, I feel that when Takira said how long, like we've been a race, I was like, oh.
Yeah, me too.
So we've been a race like for so long. It's like even like things people used to invent, inventions. And then the white people trying to make it sound like they made it. And it's like you bust your ass.
They wouldn't even tell people that we invented stuff. Exactly. That's going to be the next segment to start producing, in terms of, you all need to know now. There's so much more, Takira. I'm really grateful. This was so fascinating.
I am too. I love history, but Takira,
this is good.
No, thank you guys. I was just
thank you.
No, exactly, Takira.
I mean, to be honest with you, Charlotte, many of my clients, were like, Tracy, look up Charlotte. And the fact that you were so eloquent in including her, you didn't know, what I didn't know what you were going to produce. All I said was, could you? And so I'm really proud of Charolette Mecklenburg for showing up and for participating as a woman of color in the Royals.
You know what, too? You brought them alive tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, especially that, especially when we talked about that guy, how he learned how to play, like, you know, automatically.
Yes.
And I just screenshot it and I sent it to Lamar. I said, you need to do a reading on that. Because now I feel like he needs to do reading on people that passed, that are like, you know, begging to say, this is who we were before we got kicked.
Nice. Oh, I like that.
I feel like Lamar can, because I know Tracy talked about the deaf thing, like, you know, you got to do on deaf people. And look at that. Our own people saying, take us first.
And also, I mean, I don't know if you have the time to do this, Takira. So, of course, I'm not pressuring you to do anything. But I would love to see you do a video. Maybe.
Yeah, girl.
Maybe like yesterday on what the restructuring, you know, of either the Brits or France. I think because you were so poignant in pointing out France, because France is, you know, France is a problem because I'm Haitian.
Yeah.
You know, and we won war.
Right.
You guys were the first ones.
That's right. And let me tell you something that I believe.
Ones.
Yes, and I believe that's why Americans got it so bad. When they understood how powerful blacks were and beat out the French.
Yep.
That's when they were like, oh, we got to do the slaves different, because I was reading this thing that my daughter-in-law sent over, and it was fascinating. And I reposted it, and I'm going to send it to you, Takira.
Okay.
Where I think it was in the Virginia Commonwealth, like way before the Revolution.
Yeah.
Where there was that whole Brigatin in the Virginia Commonwealth.
Yep.
Commonwealth. And slowly but surely, the poorest and the most disgusting of the whites start to feel inadequate because blacks were showing the capability of wealth and honor.
Exactly.
I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. And so the one thing that got us were the guns.
Yeah.
It was a lopsided, you know what I mean? Like, if they would have came at us with their own hands, they would have never won.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So at some point, they just began annihilating, you know, whole towns. And I believe it's Virginia, but don't get me wrong, because I'm going to send it to you.
No.
It was so fascinating to see. But I was wondering if you could, I think France might be a good one to like complete this, like to see how France, how Meghan's influence with the Brits. That's what I want you to, we already know it will, it's already started to affect France, but what does that look like to you from the historical place to the future?
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
I would love to watch that.
I mean, if you want to, you know, take on this mission.
Should you choose to accept it?
If you choose.
I've never made a video, so I'm just like, oh.
I know it's uncomfortable, but I think
you got this.
Yeah, I think what you did here, thank you, Tiffany, you got this. I think what you did here was a video. You already did it. So now what you're going to do with the tarot is not anything different than you do every Wednesday in a book club. You just let the tarot talk to you about France's future.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Honestly, like listening to you explain the history, it just was so therapeutic, educational. I like literally I gained so much knowledge by just listening to you, and I'm just like, damn, like, why did you become my history teacher? Like, you know, like every week I might be bending it too far, but like every week I would enjoy just sitting and watching and and gaining so much knowledge from you. Seriously.
Well, I think, you know, it's so
I love
funny.
history too, but it's just that I didn't know where to begin, and because she sat there and she explained and she had the slides, it made me even more open. Like seriously.
Well, if you watch her meaning Takira, her ability to just naturally, because I think you studied history, Black history, no less, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And her ability to just just flow.
It just comes so natural.
It's just flowing. Her words are flowing.
It's like she's telling a story. And she is telling a story.
Yeah.
Because it's his story. So that's why it's just so...
Even before tonight was, you know, audio. We could hear it better. Most times it's in text message. And you could just feel exactly what you did tonight is what I had always heard come through you anyways. Anyways, I had always heard it. And so I was trying to figure out what's the best way I could communicate with you to, you know, allow the tarot fusion. And I didn't talk with you because I knew the timing was off. Like, I don't like pressure. And so I was like, no. And you stayed on my mind. And then I think you must have said something in the group chat. And I was like, okay, bingo, this might be, at least let's see it in the group. And I'm going to tell you something. Out of the park.
I'm in love. Seriously, I am in love.
Yes.
Wow.
It was really good.
I love that you started it from our perspective. It grew out of all this stuff, out of, you know, Megan. And, you know, as much as we don't want to, or I shouldn't say, I'll speak for myself. No, you know, there's always that fantasy. That's the fantasy of being rich and I want to be a princess or whatever. And it's like, do you really? And one interesting thing about it is, like, we love the drama, the conflama of it all.
Of course.
But one of the big mistakes that when Oprah asked Megan, well, didn't you look this up or look up his family?
Know?
And she said, I never Googled him. She said, I never Googled my boyfriend. What? If there was ever a time for you to do a search on a motherfucker.
I was honestly, let me tell you guys, I was going to tell her, I'm sorry, Wendy. But I was gonna say that's her white side talking because I don't know about y'all.
Well, you know what? I think let's be clear. I think because remember she's a Leo,
right?
All right. I think it was a play on words. It was the way Oprah asked the question. Didn't you ever Google? She could have honestly had never Googled, but she had high power friends.
Right. That's so true.
But it was,
and she
remember,
was a
she's
big
a smart
fan
girl.
of Diana.
Right.
She always said I was a big fan of Princess Diana. So you mean you were a fan of her philanthropy, right?
But she's not lying. Like, there's no lie. If she absolutely never Googled, she probably never
Googled.
She
Right.
just never had
technical. She just being technical
you're
because
right
I
about that. And she never had to.
She never
Because
had
her
to.
friends.
I never Googled him either, and that's true. But I know about him.
And in order to Google, like, why, like, we all knew Prince Harry, but why would you Google unless you want to look at the history like we just did? What are the pitfalls? Mm-hmm. She didn't see the pitfalls. She knew a prince.
Right.
Yeah.
And is it her fault that she goes to a party and Harry's there and they lock eyes? Like, why at that point? Think about it, guys. Why at that point would you Google him? Now you could look greedy, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's so true. Yeah.
Not in private. Not in private. You don't look greedy. You just
but it could be if she learned something and she tries to use it, it could go against her.
It does look greedy because
that's
not something you're going to keep private. You're not going to keep it
exactly.
Harry was known as a bad boy, though. He was known as a bad boy and used to get in trouble.
Right.
He went to Vegas.
A lot.
Yeah, he went to Vegas and got in trouble.
Yeah,
not in trouble, but he had all these.
Girl, please, he went into Africa and got into trouble.
He went to. He was all over every newspaper for wearing the shirt with the swastika on it. Do you remember when he wore the shirt? Right, and I think even somebody must have asked her. Why do I feel like I remember her addressing that or something? It was just the fact that he was young and blah blah blah.
Yes, yes.
So. But,
even though the one that was supposed to be coronated, I forget what his name was, you know, didn't he mingle?
Oh,
which one mingled with Hitler?
That his name was David, and then he became King Edward.
There you go.
But he was never coronated.
That's the one that was never
they
coronated.
made up the whole story about him and Wallace. That was the excuse. That was his out. I will not become king unless I can marry the woman that I love. That was not why they did not coronate him. Yep. It was not just the family. It was all the politics, all of Parliament, all of the secret people in between who ganged up and said, this guy cannot be king. And it wasn't even just because he was hanging out with Hitler. He was a little bit nuts.
He was a loose cannon.
He was a very loose cannon, and they were like, you know what? Okay, we do not want him to be king. We're gonna do. They pulled a Meghan on him. That's exactly what they did. And so they said, okay, your excuse, you can go out with a romantic excuse.
Not that Meghan's a loose cannon, but her color is how they pulled a Meghan on him.
Right. But they did the whole underground thing of people you don't see, where they pulled all the strings and said, no, this guy cannot be the king. So you're going to leave and you're going to say you can't be the king because you can't have the woman that you love. And it became a romantic story that we all know about. He gave up the kingdom for the woman he loved.
Yeah,
that's how we know it. But that was not the story by any means. And then he tried to take over. He tried to take over the government. He tried to get Elizabeth out.
Well, that's the thing. English history, like literally, if you look at a lot of English history, even from the beginning, it's always been about, like, royals have always grown up knowing you always watch your back because somebody is going to kill you or probably try to kill you in your own family. And a lot of times it'll be if, say, one brother gets, like, I think there's a perfect example. I think his name was Richard II or something. Anyways, in English history, he was king. And then they made him leave the throne because something happened. So they put his brother on. And the brother was just like, okay, I'm going to take all your titles away because I'm now king. That brother got furious because he's like, that is my birthright. And he's like, not anymore. It's not because I'm king. The brother came in, got supporters, overthrew the other brother, and then tried to kill the other brother. And that's usually what they would try to do because what happened is, I think, another king did forgive a brother who tried to overthrow him. And that brother went right behind his back, got an army of supporters, and overthrew the one brother and had him killed. So it's always been in
Wow.
that
Oh, it's
royal
all
family,
through it.
kill or be killed with your family.
Right. That's exactly. Cleopatra did it to her brother.
Yeah, that's right. I was just about to say that. She was the same one too, and it was another person too.
Yeah, one of my aunts used to always say this when we used to fight. She had 3 daughters, and me and my brother were like, you know, the cousins. So we all grew up together, 5 of us. She always used to say to her daughters, "I want you to treat each other like princesses." Well, they do. They are. I mean, we're all in our early 50s now, and they can't stand each other, and they say the nastiest things about each other. And they can't. It's like, no, never say that to your kids, because prince royalty, they kill each other. They don't care if you're a brother, especially if you're brother and sister. That's what they do, because you're in the direct line. Let me tell you. Harry would be king if he's willing to take out. If he's willing to take out Charles, William, and his 3 kids, Harry is king.
Cancel.
But then it happened with Queen Mary.
Cancel. He
it
just
happened
rather
with Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth too.
Harry, I think it's interesting to see Harry and Will's dynamic now, especially now that Harry's in America. He's kind of like, look, it is what it is. I'm willing just to do me. I got my wife, this and that. Right, Will is still very much just like I said, you watch his response to everything. It's still that very structured, like,
got it.
Did you see his body language today?
Shameful. His body language was shameful.
Did you see his body language when they first asked him that? He's walking by. He got downright ghetto. His neck went off. He got
triggered.
And then he straightened up. Yes, he got seriously triggered. I said, oh,
he got triggered. And that's the thing.
He actually crooked his neck.
Elite people hate it when you... No, that's the thing. It's like a Karen. They hate it when you call them a certain thing. Do not call them racist, because that to them is just like, what? Like it's triggering. It's like,
it's just
like
racist. My son told me that the reason why Karens are so upset when you call them that name, it's their version of the N-word.
I love how that becomes.
I like that.
If William got
have to deal with that.
If William got hood, it's because they were gonna, like, that's their capability of calling him racist, and he had to get hood. But I know he caught it. Did he catch it? Did he catch himself?
Well, he had to, because he knows if he acts out like that, he's what, third in line to the throne. How does that look?
And might as well be. He's next in line to the throne, because they ain't gonna let Charles be king. Hell no, especially after this. You know how Black Lives Matters got so much more attention this time, because everybody was locked in their houses watching, and they saw what happened, and that's all you could do is be in your house and watch the news. It's the same thing with this. People are still, they're still under lockdown in London. So what are people doing? They're watching The Crown. They're watching this season of The Crown, which is Diana.
Just got out,
goes down. This is their Black Lives Matter. Moment.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Well, how does Lamar put it?
Watch The Crown and be reminded of Diana.
How does Lamar put
it? This is Britain's
COVID moment.
COVID moment.